A quiet silence hung across the empty stretch of space where the stars seemed to burn a little less brightly, as though the universe itself sensed something was about to awaken. Far from the safe lanes of trade and patrol routes, an alien listening post floated in the darkness. The operators inside were bored, scanning endless void for the 1000th time, but then the alarms began to cry out without warning. An object appeared on their sensors, though no hyperspace gate had opened, no engine. Trail was visible, and no ship signature could be read. It was simply there one instant, the void was empty, and the next, it was not. The station crew leaned forward in shock, trying to understand what they were looking at. It was not large by the standards of galactic fleets, yet it pulled their attention, like gravity itself. A shape of steel and shadow, angular and ancient, yet untouched by time. The commander ordered full scans, but the systems flickered, then died. Consoles went black sparks, spit from panels, and one by one their tools failed, as if some invisible hand had pressed against them. The object did not move, but the station's orbit began to drift, pulled off balance, as though the mass before them was heavier than stars themselves. Fear spread among the crew. This was no ordinary vessel. The commander sent an emergency broadcast to the nearest fleet, but the signal never left the station. Communications fell into static, then silence. No matter what channel they tried, nothing left the walls. The object continued to float, unmoving, silent, patient. The youngest operator whispered a single word that froze every heart in the chamber. Human. They all turned to him. Humanity was a dead story, an old legend told to frighten cadets or stir debate among historians. No living being had seen them for thousands of cycles. The records said humanity burned itself out long before the current powers of the galaxy rose. But there were whispers, there were myths, and there was one story every culture knew. The Quantum-Locked Warship. On distant worlds, children had been warned to behave, or else the locked ship of the humans would awaken and come for them. Soldiers laughed about it during training, but none truly dared speak of it in open halls. The myth said the ship could not move, yet it could not be destroyed. Locked between moments of time, invulnerable, eternal. And when it returned, the galaxy would kneel or fall. The listening post trembled. Lights flickered across the object's hull for the first time. Lines of white-blue fire traced ancient scars and symbols. The operators watched in horror and fascination. The ship had no visible engines, no turrets, no weapons as the modern races understood them. It looked asleep, and yet its silence was heavier than 1,000 dreadnoughts. Then every system in the listening post shut down at once. Darkness swallowed the crew. Only the faint glow of emergency strips remained. The commander drew breath to order evacuation, but before he could speak, the viewport revealed the truth. The alien station was no longer moving in orbit. It was held frozen like an insect caught in glass. No thrusters fired, no power burned, yet they were trapped, suspended in the same impossible lock as the ship itself. On worlds far away, fleets noticed sudden gaps in their communications network. Whole systems blinked out one after another, replaced by blank space. Admirals tried to gather intelligence, but data vanished in streams of static. Some thought it was sabotage, others whispered of forbidden technology, but one word passed like wildfire through encrypted channels. Human. The warship remained still as days passed, but those who looked upon it knew it was not asleep. Merchant ships stumbled across the sector and never returned. Patrol fleets tried to approach and were never heard from again. The Alien Council convened in panic, but no decision was reached. Some demanded a strike at once before fear spread. Further, others warned that legends were not so easily dismissed. Inside the listening post, madness began to grow. With no power, no signal, no escape, the crew sat in endless dark, watching the warship through the viewport. Sometimes it appeared closer, though it had not moved. Sometimes they swore it was larger, though no engines burned. Whispers filled the corridors. The young operator spoke again, repeating the same phrase over and over. It waits, it waits, it waits. Then, at last, the warship moved, not with engines, not with sound, but with inevitability. One instant it was still the next. It was directly before the station's viewport, filling their sight with endless black steel and burning white lines. A voice thundered through the minds of every crew member, a voice not heard in thousands of cycles. Calm, cold, merciless. We are awake. The words cut through bone and thought alike. No translation, no delay, every mind understood in their own tongue. The crew collapsed to the floor, screaming or praying. The commander clutched his head as visions filled his mind. He saw ancient wars, stars, burning fleets shattered. He saw humanity standing unbroken against endless numbers, wielding weapons that tore physics itself. He saw this ship, the Quantum-Locked Warship, hovering above broken empires while kings bent the knee. The voice came again, slow, deliberate, final. You will kneel, then silence. The warship drifted backward, still locked in time, yet its presence radiated across the sector. Fleets that dared to enter vanished before even seeing it. Energy fields collapsed in its shadow. Civilizations that heard. The rumors grew restless, fearful. The council debated in emergency session, but none could agree. Should they rally their fleets or bow before a power none truly understood? The listening post was never heard from again. A salvage crew arrived months later and found nothing. No station, no wreckage, not even fragments, only the warship drifting. Silent, eternal, waiting for its next witness. And so the story began to spread. From smugglers and spies, from half-broken transmissions carried on the edge of static. An ancient power had returned. A warship locked outside time itself, indestructible, unstoppable, undeniable, and with it came the promise that made even the proudest empires tremble, kneel, or vanish. The galaxy had no answer. Not yet. The void stretched around the warship, but it was no longer empty. For the first time in millennia, a human voice had spoken again, and the stars themselves seemed to listen. Those who dared look upon it knew one truth deep inside their bones. This was not war. This was not conquest. This was judgment, and the judgment had only just begun. The council chamber was never silent, but tonight the sound was different. It was fear cloaked in whispers and trembling voices. Holographic images of alien leaders filled the vast room, each face lit in pale blue light from a dozen distant worlds. They were gathered to discuss the one thing none of them wanted to name. The object, the ship, the legend made real again. The Quantum-Locked Warship. The first speaker, a scaled governor from the outer rim, tried to sound brave, his voice harsh and cutting. He said the stories were exaggerations, humans were extinct. Long ago, this must be a derelict ship drifting into their space. His words were met with silence, then a slow hiss from a rival general who leaned forward, his black eyes wide. If it was a derelict, then why had a fleet of 100 ships already vanished near its shadow? Why had entire star systems gone dark? No one answered, because everyone knew the truth. The warship was not dead. It was awake. The chamber filled with competing voices, some demanding immediate attack, others screaming for surrender before it was too late. The more they argued, the heavier the air became. Every leader knew the stories passed down across cultures, across centuries. When the humans returned, they would not ask for treaties or mercy. They would demand one thing: submission. In a corner of the galaxy, a fleet of cruisers gathered near the dead sector where the listening post had once been. Their commander was young, proud, unwilling to believe in myths. He had studied strategy and won many battles, and he thought fear was the greatest enemy, not the warship. His orders were clear: approach the object, make contact, and if necessary, destroy it. His officers obeyed, though unease clung to every movement. The fleet entered the dark region of space where sensors failed and energy drifted strange and broken. They formed tight formation weapons, ready shields high, and then it appeared before them. No alarms, no warnings, no jump signature. One instant the void was empty, the next the warship hung in their path, silent and vast. Its lines burned faint blue across black steel like veins of fire. The commander gave the order to broadcast across every frequency. His voice filled the dark, offering peace, offering dialogue, offering alliance. But there was no reply, only silence. His second officer begged to retreat, but the commander's pride burned hotter. He ordered the fleet to open fire. Every ship unleashed its weapons in unison, beams of plasma missiles, of light rail rounds fired with precision. The stars vanished, behind the flood of firepower. For a heartbeat there was hope. For a heartbeat the commander believed. Then the weapons were gone. Not destroyed, not deflected, simply gone, erased before they touched the warship's hull. It had not moved, it had not shielded itself, it had not fought. Reality itself bent around it and swallowed their attack. The fleet's systems began to die, one by one. Shields collapsed, engines flickered, sensors went blind. Pilots screamed over comms as ships lost control. The commander shouted orders, but the sound was swallowed in static. On the viewport, the warship drifted closer, though it had not moved. It filled their vision, its lines pulsing brighter like a heartbeat. Then came the voice, "You will kneel." Every mind heard it at once. No translation needed, no machine required. It struck like thunder inside their skulls. Some dropped to their knees without thinking, some cried out, some tried to fire again, but their weapons were useless. The commander stared, frozen sweat running down his scales. He tried to resist, to deny, but when his eyes met the burning lines on that hull, his will cracked. One by one the ships fell silent. No explosions, no wreckage, simply silence. Those few who survived long enough to speak whispered the same thing. Before their signals faded, "We obey." The council received fragments of the event hours later, broken transmissions, static-filled screams, the echo of a voice that was not alien but human. The chamber descended into chaos. Some demanded they raise every fleet they had. Some demanded they kneel immediately before the warship moved again. The room filled with fear and shouting. Among them, an elder historian spoke for the first time, his voice weak but steady. He told the tale of the last time the humans walked among the stars. He spoke of empires erased in moments, planets silenced, fleets unmade without effort. He said the humans built the warship as a final judgment, a vessel that could not be destroyed, a vessel that would return when balance was broken. The council mocked him, but inside their hearts they believed. Across the galaxy, panic spread faster than light. Merchants abandoned trade routes, entire colonies packed their belongings and fled deeper into safe sectors, though none truly knew what safe meant anymore. Priests preached the return of gods, soldiers whispered the end of all things, but everywhere the same phrase spread on every channel, every whispered corner: the humans have returned. In the dead sector, the warship remained silent, still drifting, without sound. Yet its presence was felt in every system. Energy flows, bent, communications failed, ships vanished. The warship did not need to move, its shadow alone was enough. The commanders of empires stared at their star maps, watching entire territories go dark one after another. On one world, a young alien child looked up at the night sky and saw a star vanish. She asked her father why the stars were going out. He could not answer. Back in the council chamber, the arguments had turned to screams. Some leaders fled the session, unwilling to listen further. Others pounded their fists, demanding war, no matter the cost. But deep inside each of them a seed of doubt grew. They all knew the warship had not truly acted yet. It had not fired a weapon, had not taken a world, had not broken a fleet. It had only spoken 2 words. And still entire civilizations trembled. On the edges of the chamber, the elder historian whispered to himself, repeating the old warning passed down through forgotten ages. When the warship awakens, kneel or be erased. Far away in the dark, The warship's lines pulsed brighter for a moment, then dimmed again as if listening, waiting patient. It did not chase fleets, it did not bombard planets, it simply existed. But existence alone was enough. The galaxy had never known such silence, such dread. Every admiral, every governor, every priest felt the same question burning in their mind. Would they fight or would they kneel? The answer had not yet been given, but already the warship had shown its power. 100 ships had fired, and not one scratch marked its hull. Thousands of lives had vanished into nothing without resistance, and still it waited. The commander of the lost fleet, his name already forgotten by his people, had believed pride was stronger than myth. His name would never be remembered, but his last thought as the voice filled his mind was not pride. It was the realization that myth had always been truth, and truth was unstoppable. The council recessed in chaos, no decisions reached. The galaxy stood at the edge of a choice, but no one was ready to speak it. Out among the stars, the warship remained. Still, but its shadow stretched farther each passing hour. Civilizations felt its gaze, though it had no eyes. They felt its judgment, though it had not moved. And in the silence of its eternal lock, the voice whispered again, though no ears heard it this time. A promise made to the stars themselves. They will kneel. The galaxy turned restless as the shadow of the warship grew larger with each passing cycle. Worlds whispered of it, though no official report dared to confirm its presence. Some rulers tried to hide the truth, but fear was not so easily silenced. Traders carried stories across sectors. Soldiers returned, broken, muttering the same word over and over: human. Still, the warship did not move still, it did not fire, yet entire empires trembled at its name. On the ancient archive world of Corias, deep beneath a mountain of crystal, an old scholar searched through forbidden texts. His fingers trembled as he touched pages that had not seen light in 1,000 years. The council had summoned him, demanded answers for the growing terror. They asked him why the warship existed, why humans had built such a thing, and why it had returned now. The scholar knew the risk of speaking the old words, but fear was stronger than silence. He told them a history buried by design, erased by victors, rewritten so carefully that only fragments survived. He told them of the time before, the great empires of the galaxy, when humanity rose from a small blue world and stretched across the stars with unmatched hunger. Unlike others, they did not fear the dark. They did not wait for centuries before taking steps forward. They leaped into the void and remade it in their image. Their technology grew fast, their armies faster. Where they went, no enemy could stand. The scholar whispered that many civilizations of the present were once enemies of humankind long ago. Some had lost entire systems, some had surrendered before a single shot was fired. Humanity was not like the others, because they refused to kneel. They fought until no weapon could harm them, until no blockade could starve them, until no alliance could break them. The galaxy united once to defeat them, yet even then the humans held their ground. But in the end, something changed. The texts did not say what destroyed their empire. Some believed humanity turned on itself, tearing apart its own kind with weapons too great for survival. Others claimed they transcended, rising beyond physical form into something higher. Yet before they vanished, they left behind one creation, a ship unlike any other. A ship bound in quantum lock, immune to decay, immune to destruction, immune to time. Itself, a ship built to return when balance was broken, when empires grew arrogant, when the galaxy forgot fear. The scholar's voice shook as he described the oath written in human code. When the warship awakens, there will be no negotiation, no compromise. It will bring choice, and only choice: kneel or vanish. He warned the council that resistance was not survival, resistance was extinction. Some leaders mocked him, calling it superstition, a tale told to control the weak. Yet their laughter was hollow. They had seen fleets erased without effort. They had heard the voice across their minds. They knew the words were truth, even if they dared not admit it. On the other side of the galaxy, deep scanners detected something strange near the warship. It was not alone. Small echoes surrounded it, faint signals hard to detect as though hidden behind the fabric of time itself. Some believed them to be drones or escorts. Others whispered of ghost ships, remnants of the old human fleets locked away with the warship. The discovery shook commanders, who realized they might not be facing a single vessel, but an entire hidden armada waiting to awaken. The panic deepened. Civilizations began to fracture. Some worlds refused to wait for orders and declared immediate surrender to the warship. Entire colonies broadcast kneeling rituals into the void, hoping the humans would hear. Other empires doubled down, swearing to fight to the last. Recruitment surged as leaders filled their people with empty pride. But even in their loudest speeches there was doubt. In a quiet chamber on a border world, a soldier remembered the tales his grandmother told him as a child. Stories of the great warship drifting through the stars, judging all it saw. He never believed them until now. He told his comrades that maybe the humans were not monsters, maybe they were guardians returned to punish the cruel and protect the weak. His words spread through the barracks, filling some with hope, though others feared it meant they too would be judged unworthy. Meanwhile, the warship remained unmoving, but every ship that drifted near disappeared without trace. It was as though the vessel did not need to strike, it simply consumed anything that dared approach. The survivors of the failed fleet still haunted the thoughts of admirals who had seen their last transmission. A voice of human origin echoing. Across the stars, commanding kneel. One empire, desperate for answers, sent spies into forgotten ruins, across dead worlds once touched by humanity. On the shattered planet of Dran, they uncovered carvings older than their own race. The carvings depicted humans standing tall, while alien kings bowed before them. Behind the humans was the shape of the warship etched into stone like a god. At the bottom of the carvings, words burned in ancient language, submit or cease. The spies returned with terror in their eyes. They tried to burn the evidence, but the message spread too quickly. Even children now whispered the words in the streets. In the markets and temples across the galaxy, the story rose again from dust. Humanity was never truly gone. They had only been waiting. Back in the scholars' archives, a forbidden scroll revealed one more secret. The warship was said to carry not only weapons, but memories. It stored the minds of human commanders long dead, ready to awaken when called. Some believed the ship itself was alive, bound by will and oath, not machinery. If true, then every decision it made, every judgment it passed, was guided by human thought, unchanged by time. The galaxy was not only facing a machine, it was facing humanity itself, risen from the grave. The scholar trembled as he read this aloud, knowing the weight of such knowledge. The council sat silent, no longer mocking, no longer shouting. For the first time, they felt the full weight of the truth. This was not a derelict ship. This was not an unknown weapon. This was judgment designed long before their empires were even born. On distant worlds, priests began to build altars to the warship, worshipping it as a returning god. Some knelt in prayer, some begged for mercy, others cursed the humans as devils. But even in their curses there was fear. Farmers in fields looked at the stars and wondered if their harvest would matter if tomorrow brought only silence. Children listened to stories told in hushed tones, wondering if the humans were saviors or executioners. The warship pulsed once more, lines of blue light running across its hull like veins awakening. The pulse spread through the void, reaching, listening, posts, fleets, even planets. For a moment, entire star systems lost power, as though the universe itself had blinked. And then the lights returned, but the fear remained deeper than before. In that moment, across countless minds, a single image burned. a memory not their own. Human soldiers standing in endless ranks, eyes like fire ships, black as night hovering above. Broken worlds. The image vanished, but the echo lingered. The warship was not only showing power, it was showing memory. It was reminding the galaxy of what humanity once was. The council reconvened, but now no one shouted. They sat in heavy silence while the scholars' words hung in the air. They knew the truth even if they dared not speak it. Humanity had built the warship as final law, and now the law had returned. On the edge of the dead sector, a lone merchant ship drifted too close. Its crew panicked as systems failed, but then something strange happened. Instead of vanishing, the ship was pulled gently back, its engines reigniting as if gifted a second chance. They fled immediately, broadcasting the tale. The warship had spared them. Why, no one knew. Perhaps they had not been seen as a threat. Perhaps the humans had chosen to let their story spread, and spread it did faster than light, faster than truth itself. The galaxy now understood this was no accident, no forgotten relic. This was deliberate. The warship had chosen to reveal itself, chosen to let them witness its presence. It was not waiting by chance, it was waiting for purpose. The scholar read the final line of the oath aloud, his voice breaking as tears ran down his face. When the warship returns, it does not seek conquest, it seeks balance. Those who forget balance will kneel, those who defy balance will cease. The council dismissed him, but his words echoed in their minds. In the void, the warship drifted silent, patient, its lines glowing like the breath of gods. It needed no fleet, no army, no empire. Its presence alone had begun to rewrite the galaxy. Rulers feared soldiers, doubted civilians prayed. And all across the stars, the question grew louder. When judgment comes, will we kneel or will we vanish? The warship offered no answer. Not yet. It only waited, timeless, endless, a shadow across the galaxy. And in that silence, the suspense grew unbearable. Because every soul knew one truth that burned brighter than any star. The humans were not gone. The humans were returning. And their judgment would be final. The stars themselves seemed to dim when the warship stirred again after long cycles of silence. For weeks it had remained still in the dead sector, a ghost of steel and shadow, a myth made real that refused to act. But then the pulse came. It was not a weapon, not a signal as machines understand it. It was a vibration through thought itself, a whisper that reached across worlds without sound. Across the galaxy, billions of minds turned toward the same place at the same instant. The humans had spoken again. The message was simple, clear, undeniable. We are awake. Admirals snapped to attention. Priests fell to their knees. Entire governments froze as if the words carried physical weight. On a border colony, a farmer dropped his tools and whispered the words aloud, though he had never heard human language before. On a mining station, children cried without knowing why. The message carried no threat, no detail, yet it was heavier than 1,000 fleets. In the council chamber of the ruling alliance, panic finally became chaos. Leaders screamed at one another, pointing claws, tendrils, and hands in blame. Some demanded immediate surrender, broadcasting obedience before it was too late. Others insisted this was bluff, a weapon of fear, a trick to control them. Yet all of them knew the warship had not fired once, and still fleets had vanished. They had not seen it fight, but already they knew resistance meant nothing. Then the warship moved. It did not drift silently as before, it shifted deliberately into the path of a proud empire. The Zorath Dominion had long mocked the growing fear across the galaxy. Their rulers believed strength was shown only through defiance. When the warship appeared in their sector, their emperor broadcast across every channel with laughter. He promised to break the human myth and hang its wreckage above his throne. His words were carried live to billions across the stars. The Zorath sent their grand fleet, the largest in their history, 2,000 ships bristling with weapons engines blazing with defiance. They surrounded the warship from every side, encircling it like hunters trapping prey. Across the galaxy, eyes turned to the battle, waiting to see if legend would finally bleed. The Zorath fired first. A storm of light and fire swallowed the void. Plasma streams, missiles of antimatter beams brighter than suns. The dark space became brighter than day as 2,000 ships unleashed fury at once. For long moments the firestorm raged, drowning the warship in impossible force. Even the bravest believers felt doubt whispering maybe the humans were not eternal, maybe the myth was only myth. But then the fire faded, and the warship remained untouched. Not a mark, not a scratch. It floated exactly as before, lines of blue light burning brighter against the black hull. The silence that followed was heavier than the weapons had been. Entire galaxies seemed to hold their breath. Then the Zorath fleet screamed forward. Ships closed the distance, desperate to strike with claws and steel. They launched boarding pods. Swarms of drones, desperate to tear the myth open. None reached. In an instant, the fleet began to collapse, not with fire, not with explosion, but with silence. One ship at a time, lights dimmed, engines died, weapons fell quiet. A dreadnought 3, kilometers long, went dark, drifting lifeless before breaking into dust that shimmered like smoke. Another ship crumbled from bow to stern, dissolving into particles before the eyes of its crew. They had no time to scream. The warship had still not fired. It had not moved. It simply unmade them, as though erasing mistakes from a page. Across the galaxy, billions watched in silence. The proud Dominion fleet disintegrated ship by ship until only wreckage remained. Then even the wreckage was gone. Not debris, not fire, not bodies, nothing. The largest fleet in Zorath history erased as if it had never been, and then came the voice carried into every mind across the stars. This is not war. This is judgment. The words shook even those who had never believed. Priests wept. Emperors clenched their thrones. Soldiers dropped their weapons. The warship had spoken not in anger, but in cold finality. It was not an enemy. It was not an ally. It was something beyond both. On the throne world of the Zorath Dominion, their emperor fell silent, his laughter gone, his pride broken. Before his people, before the galaxy, he knelt. He lowered his crown, placed it on the floor, and bowed his head toward the void. His armies followed. The Dominion was the first to kneel, but not the last. On distant colonies, messages of surrender were broadcast into the dark. Some worlds burned their flags and raised none in their place. Others prayed into the sky, begging for mercy from a vessel that had not spoken again. Even those who still dreamed of defiance now spoke more quietly for fear the warship might hear. But not all knelt. In hidden chambers, other rulers whispered rebellion. They believed if the galaxy united in numbers, they might overwhelm the human relic. They pointed at ancient records of alliances that once challenged humanity, though none had truly won. Still pride pushed them forward, yet even they could not deny what they had seen. The warship had erased 2,000 ships without firing a single shot. It had demanded nothing, yet gained everything. It did not conquer with fire, it conquered with fear. And fear spread faster than light. In the shadows of its hull, the warship pulsed once more, sending ripples of blue light across the void. Some swore they saw smaller shapes flicker into existence for a heartbeat, ships like shadows forming around it before vanishing again. If true, then the warship was not alone. It had an armada waiting in its lock, waiting for the right moment to awaken. The galaxy held its breath as the warship turned away from the wreckage of the Zorath fleet. It did not celebrate, it did not pursue. It simply drifted onward, silent and patient. But everyone who saw it knew the truth. It had chosen to Spare the Dominion Emperor so the galaxy could see him kneel. The demonstration was not for victory, it was for submission, and submission had begun. Still in the deepest corners of the galaxy, a dangerous question grew. If this was only the beginning, what would the warship do when it truly acted, when it finally unleashed the full memory of humanity that burned within its core? The galaxy did not have the answer, not yet. But the warship was patient, and its judgment had only just begun. The galaxy did not sleep after the fall of the Zorath fleet. Fear spread like fire through every world, every station, every fleet. Across the stars, people whispered the same words the warship had spoken. This is not war, this is judgment. Priests etched them into temple walls, generals shouted them as curses. Merchants muttered them under breath while closing trade routes. For the first time in living memory, the galaxy knew one common fear, yet not all bowed. In the hidden halls of power, rebellion took shape. Proud rulers, unwilling to kneel, gathered in secret. They had watched the Zorath Dominion kneel like slaves, and their pride burned hotter than their fear. They swore they would not fall as easily. They swore the galaxy would not bow without a fight, and so they gathered fleets. The greatest coalition in history began to form. Empires that had hated one another for centuries placed their hatred aside to face the greater terror. Ships from 100 species gathered in hidden sectors, millions of lives thrown into steel hulls and armed with the finest weapons the galaxy had ever built. They built strategies around swarms, around numbers, around relentless fire. They believed that if 2,000 ships could be erased, then perhaps 50,000 could not. In dark war rooms, commanders studied the warship's silence. It did not move with speed. It did not fire weapons of its own. They believed its power must have limits hidden somewhere inside the myth. They told themselves no ship could be truly invincible. The humans were long gone. This relic must have weakness. They only had to find it, and so the day came. The coalition gathered at the edge of the dead sector, their fleet stretching across the stars like a river of fire. 50,000 ships, bristling with weapons, shields, glowing engines roaring. Never before had such force been seen. Entire civilizations emptied their reserves to join this strike. It was their one chance to stand against judgment. When the warship appeared, they almost cheered. It emerged in silence exactly as before. No jump, no warning, only presence. Against 50,000 vessels it looked small, almost fragile. Admirals filled with pride shouted across comms, promising victory. The order was given, and the greatest storm of fire the galaxy had ever seen was unleashed. The void turned into a burning sun. Beams of plasma brighter than stars, missiles faster than light, storms of kinetic fire, all converged on one point. The warship vanished inside the light, drowned in impossible destruction. For long moments the commanders believed. They shouted, they laughed, they told their crews the myth was broken. Then the fire faded, and the warship remained, untouched. Not a mark scarred its hull. Its lines of blue light pulsed calmly, as if in response to a question. The coalition froze in silence, their victory dissolving into dread. And then ships began to die. Not by explosion, not by fire. One by one, systems went dark. A frigate at the edge of formation simply vanished, leaving only empty space. A cruiser twisted in on itself, its hull folding as though erased from reality. Entire wings of fighters dissolved into dust. Before their pilots could scream, the warship did not fire a single shot. It simply unmade them. Admirals shouted for retreat, but their signals were broken by static. Captains tried to turn ships around, but engines would not answer. The fleet was caught in the lock, the same impossible grip that held the listening post. Long ago, they could not move, they could not escape, they could only watch as their armada died around them. Panic spread across the formation. Some ships broadcast surrender signals, screaming into the void, begging for mercy. Others fought harder, firing blindly, though every weapon dissolved before reaching its target. Entire crews broke into chaos, some praying, some weeping, some tearing. At controls, in hopeless rage, the warship gave no answer. Within an hour, half the coalition was gone. Within 2 hours, nothing remained. 50,000 ships erased as though they had never existed. Not even wreckage drifted in the void. Only silence. And then the voice came again, across every mind in the galaxy. You cannot resist. You will kneel. The words carved themselves into memory, sharper than any blade. This was not boast, this was truth. The coalition, the greatest force in history, had been destroyed without a fight. The galaxy felt the weight of hopelessness like chains around their throats. On worlds across the stars, people collapsed in grief. Soldiers threw down weapons. Civilians built altars to the warship emperors, cursed before falling silent. Even the proudest rulers who had sworn defiance now sat alone in their chambers, knowing they had nothing left. But the warship did not move to conquer. It did not descend upon planets or demand tribute. It remained still in the void, watching, waiting, patient. It had made its demonstration clear. Resistance was not survival. Resistance was erasure, and so more worlds began to kneel. Entire civilizations broadcast their submission into the stars. Colonies painted human symbols on their streets, begging to be spared. Fleets were dismantled not by command, but by choice. As admirals refused to waste lives, across the galaxy order began to collapse, replaced by silence and fear. Yet, in the quiet corners of the galaxy, not all hope was gone. Some whispered of a hidden power, long forgotten, something that might stand against the warship. Old ruins spoke of ancient weapons, not of humans, but of civilizations older still. Few dared speak of it aloud, for fear the warship might hear, but the whispers spread. For now, though, the galaxy was broken. 50,000 ships gone as if they had never been. Empires kneeling not out of choice but out of terror. And above it, all the warship remained unchanged, eternal, silent, locked in time, but never defeated. Its judgment had only begun, and every being across the stars now understood the truth. The humans had not returned for war. They had returned for obedience, and before long the entire galaxy would kneel. For cycles, the warship had drifted silent in the dead sector, its blue lines pulsing like the heartbeat of some sleeping god. It had erased fleets, erased empires, erased pride itself, without ever firing a visible weapon. Yet still, the galaxy waited in dreadful silence, wondering if there was more hidden inside the lock, more than steel, more than shadow. That answer came when the warship opened. It began with a shift so small, only the closest observers noticed. A seam along the ancient hull parted, releasing a glow like frozen starlight. The light spread along the vessel, tracing its impossible geometry, until an aperture widened on its surface. From that opening, figures emerged. Not machines, not drones, not faceless weapons. They were human. The galaxy froze. The figures stepped into the void, clad in armor of black silver, their bodies outlined by faint blue fire. They did not wear suits as other species understood them. They did not need to. The void bent around them, as though space itself obeyed their presence. They walked across the hull of the warship as if it were ground beneath their feet, calm, precise, unhurried. Across the stars, minds reeled. For generations, humanity had been myth, a story told in whispers, a warning carved into ruins. Now they were here, walking in living form where no one could deny. Their faces were calm, expressionless, yet their eyes burned with impossible light. Some watching swore they were not flesh at all, but echoes of flesh bound to something greater. Then one of them spoke, and every being across the galaxy heard the words in their own tongue. We were never gone. The voice carried no emotion, but its weight crushed hearts and lifted fears all at once. Across temples, priests wailed in awe. Across war rooms, admirals clenched their fists in despair. Across farms and cities, ordinary beings, fell to their knees weeping because they knew the truth. Humanity had not died. Humanity had become something more. The human figure raised a hand, and stars flickered in response. Ships on the edges of the sector lost power. Entire moons shifted, slightly in orbit as if reality itself leaned closer. Yet the figure gave no threat, only one promise. We waited. Now you will kneel. On the throne world of a proud empire, the ruler watched the transmission. He had sworn never to kneel, had sworn to fight to the end. Yet when he met the gaze of the human echo, his body shook. He fell to his knees without command, without thought. His guards followed. Entire cities across his empire followed. One empire after another broke in the same way, not by fire, not by blade, but by will. Still some resisted. In the hidden chambers of the shattered coalition, survivors whispered of hope. They studied the humans carefully, trying to see weakness in their movements. They argued that these were not the true humans, only shadows, only fragments. If shadows could walk, then perhaps shadows could be destroyed. Yet their voices were drowned by fear, for they knew deep inside, even shadows of humanity were stronger than any living empire. On a distant mining colony, a child looked into the night sky and asked her mother why the humans had come back. Mother had no answer, only silence. But inside her heart she felt the same truth everyone felt. The humans had come not for conquest, not for destruction, but for something more absolute. Order. The warship's aperture widened further and more figures. Stepped out ranks of humans standing side by side. Their armor gleaming with cold fire. They looked like an army from legend, an army that had never truly left. Yet they did not march, they did not raise weapons. They simply stood upon the hull like statues of judgment, gazing into the void. Their presence alone was enough. Entire civilizations surrendered at the sight. Then the lead figure spoke again, and the galaxy shuddered. Your worlds are ours, your fleets are ours, your future is ours. You will kneel and live, you will resist and vanish. There was no room for negotiation, no space for compromise. The words were final law. The humans had returned not as conquerors, but as rulers, inevitable, unstoppable, eternal. Across the stars, submission spread faster than light. Colonies broadcast their obedience in desperate signals. Armies laid down weapons before orders were given. Civilians painted human symbols across their homes, begging to be spared. Some whispered that maybe this was salvation, that the humans would bring balance and end the endless wars. Others cursed, through tears, knowing their freedom was gone forever. But even in obedience, fear remained. For if the humans had returned, then what else had they left behind? What other forces slept in silence, waiting to awaken? And most terrifying of all, why had they chosen this moment, this age, to rise again? The warship closed its aperture, but the humans remained standing upon its hull, their eyes burning, their silence louder than any fleet. The galaxy could not look away. They were here, they were real, and they were eternal. And every being across the stars understood one truth that night. The humans had not returned to ask, they had returned to command, and before long the entire galaxy would kneel. Worlds across the galaxy faced the same question. Kneel or burn. The message of the humans spread like a plague, faster than light, faster than fear itself. One by one, empires who had ruled for centuries found their people falling to their knees, not from war, not from hunger, but from the weight of knowing. Resistance meant erasure on the crystal palaces of the Seraki dynasty. The queen, who had never bowed to anyone, stood before her people and trembled. She had sworn loyalty only to her bloodline, yet when the human voices filled her mind, she felt her knees weaken. Her guards dropped their weapons, her court wept. She looked at the stars and whispered, "We kneel," and across her empire, every colony, every station echoed her words. The Krell Dominion tried to resist their fleets, already shattered from the coalition. Their soldiers still loyal, their rulers still proud, they gathered. What ships remained and swore they would never surrender. But when their last armada faced the warship, it took less than minutes for them to vanish. Entire cities followed, dissolved into ash without fire or noise. The survivors begged to kneel, and they were spared. The Krell learned the truth. Kneeling was survival. On the far rim, the gentle Yari, who had never fought a war, knelt before, being asked their leaders broadcast surrender across every channel, their voices shaking with both fear and hope. They prayed the humans would grant them mercy, and to their shock they were spared untouched, protected by the warship's shadow. Their submission was rewarded, not punished. For them kneeling was salvation. The galaxy soon divided into two kinds of worlds, those who knelt quickly and those who tried to resist. Those who resisted vanished as though they had never been their stars, dimming their histories, erased their names no longer spoken. Those who knelt lived in silence, watched and judged, but alive. The warship did not conquer with armies. It did not land troops or burn cities. It did not need to its presence alone. Bent wills its silence louder than any weapon. The humans who stood upon its hull never moved, never struck, but their eyes burned into every world, and every world understood the choice: kneel or vanish. Yet whispers spread through the dark places of the galaxy, whispers of defiance, not open, not loud, but secret. Some claimed there must be a weakness hidden in the lock, hidden in the humans themselves. Some claimed to know of a power older than humanity, older than the warship, something hidden in the ruins of forgotten stars. They said if it still existed, it was the only hope, in the underground chambers of Shattered. Coalition survivors whispered these things in shadows, afraid to speak too loud, afraid the humans would hear. They passed maps, fragments of forbidden texts, stories of weapons that once rivaled the first humans. They spoke of a hidden power stirring slowly in the void. But while whispers spread, the kneeling continued, planet by planet, system by system, empire by empire. The galaxy bent to the will of the humans, not through choice but through inevitability. A miner on a barren rock whispered into the dust. I kneel. A general on a fortress world whispered before his army. We kneel. A child in a distant colony whispered to the night sky. We kneel. And all across the stars, the echoes grew louder. Kneeling became the breath of survival. The warship remained still, its blue lines pulsing, its human echoes unmoving. Yet its silence pressed heavier with each passing cycle, like a storm waiting to break. And though many submitted, whispers in the dark warned that something older, something dangerous, was awakening, something that did not kneel. But until that day, the galaxy belonged to the humans. Once myth, now rulers, once feared, now obeyed. Their return was no longer questioned, their judgment no longer doubted. The galaxy had made its choice: kneel or vanish, and most had chosen to kneel. The galaxy had bent, the galaxy had broken, and the galaxy had knelt, world after world, voice after voice, surrender after surrender. The tide of obedience had drowned almost all light of rebellion. Only whispers remained, drifting like smoke in the ruins of what had once been pride. Yet still, the warship lingered silent, its human echoes unmoving, standing watch upon the hull like statues of eternity. For many, the silence itself was the worst punishment. They had surrendered, they had knelt, yet the humans gave no command, offered no promise, only judgment through stillness across entire civilizations. The waiting grew heavier than war. Priests begged for signs, rulers prayed for words, children feared the silence in their sleep. What would come next? What did the humans want? Why now? Then the silence broke. The warship's pulse grew stronger, blue light flooding across its hull, brighter than suns. Stars themselves seemed to dim before it, and once again an aperture opened. The human echoes turned as one, their burning eyes fixed upon the void, and the galaxy trembled. Then a voice filled every mind, the final voice. The age of chaos is over. The age of kneeling has begun. Across worlds, people screamed. Across temples, priests collapsed. Across fleets, admirals wept. The words were not command, they were law. Reality itself seemed to bend as the voice spoke. Every empire, every colony, every being felt chains around their soul, chains that could not be. Broken kneeling was no longer choice. Kneeling was nature, but even as the galaxy bent, something else stirred in the dark. The whispers of ancient power became more than whispers on a forgotten world long dead before humans rose. A machine woke, a machine older than the warship, older than humanity itself. Its eyes opened in the dust. Its heart pulsed with fire, not blue, but red. It had waited in silence through eons, buried, forgotten, but not gone. The humans knew they turned their burning gaze toward that forgotten world, their silence heavy with recognition. For the first time, the echoes upon the hull moved. Their heads bowed slightly, as if even they remembered fear. The galaxy watched, held between submission and hope. For if something could rise against the humans, perhaps freedom was not gone forever, yet those who whispered trembled too. For if that ancient power rose, then war beyond imagination would come. War greater than kneeling, greater than erasure. The warship pulsed brighter. Preparing its next step, the humans raised their hands toward the stars, and the galaxy understood. Judgment was not finished. Judgment had only begun. On 1,000 worlds, people knelt in silence. On 1,000 others, people whispered of the red light. Stirring beneath ancient stone, across the stars fear grew thicker, hope grew sharper, and the question no longer was, will we kneel, but will we survive? The humans had returned their warship unbroken, their will unchallenged, their power unstoppable. Yet in the shadows something older stirred, and the galaxy waited, trembling, caught between chains of blue and fire of red. The final truth settled heavy upon every soul. The humans were not the end. They were the beginning, and the kneeling of the galaxy was only the first chapter of something far greater, far darker, and far more inevitable.